March 9th, 1900, Volume 3, Grace is Like the Sun. As I was a little disturbed because of something which is not necessary to say here, my mind wanted to go wandering about, so as to be assured about my disturbance and so remain at peace. But blessed Jesus, wanting to contradict my will, prevented me from seeing what I wanted. And since I insisted in wanting to see, he told me, "Why do you want to go wandering about? Don't you know that one who goes out of my will goes out of the light and confines himself into darkness?" And almost wanting to distract me from what I wanted, he transported me outside of myself, and changing the subject, he added, "Take a look at how ungrateful men are to me. The light of the sun fills the whole earth, from one end to another, in such a way that there is no land which does not enjoy the benefit of its light, and there is no one who can complain about being without its beneficial influence. In fact, investing the whole universe, the sun takes it as though in hand to be able to give light to all. Only one who, escaping from its hand, goes to hide in dark places can complain of not enjoying its light. And yet, continuing its charitable office, the sun does not cease to send him a few glimmers of light through its fingers. So is my grace, an image of the sun, which inundates the people everywhere, poor and rich, ignorant and learned, Christians and unbelievers. No one can say he is without it, because the light of truth and the influence of my grace fill the earth more than the sun in its full midday. But what pain is mine in seeing people who, passing through this light with their eyes closed, and confronting my grace with the pestilent torrent of their iniquities, deviate from this light, and live voluntarily in dark places, in the midst of cruel enemies. They are exposed to 1,000 dangers, because not having light, they cannot know clearly whether they are in the midst of friends or enemies, and therefore shun the dangers that surround them. If the sun had reason, and men were able to give this affront to its light, and some of them, to irritate its light and not to see it, reached such ingratitude as to pluck their eyes out, so as to be more sure of living in darkness. Instead of sending light, the sun would send laments and cries of sorrow, such as to turn all nature upside down. Yet, that which one would have horror in doing to natural light, men reach such excess as to do to my grace, treating it in this way. But my grace, always benign with them, in the midst of darkness itself and of the madness of their blindness, always sends glimmers of light, because my grace never leaves anyone. It is man who voluntarily goes out of it, and grace, not having him within itself, tries to follow him with glimmers of its light. While saying this, sweet Jesus was extremely afflicted, and I did as much as I could to console him, praying him to pour his bitternesses into me. And he added, "Bear with me if I am a cause of affliction for you, because once in a while I feel all the necessity, with my beloved souls, to pour out my pain in words for the ingratitude of men, so as to move their hearts, to repair for such an excess, and to compassion for men themselves. And I, Lord, what I would like is that you do not spare me the sharing in your pains." And as I tried to say some more, he disappeared from me, and I returned into myself. March 9th, 1903, Volume 4, Jesus Speaks About Humility, and about correspondence to grace. Continuing in my usual state, I could hear Blessed Jesus praying in my interior, saying, "Holy Father, glorify your name, confuse the proud and hide yourself from them, and manifest yourself to the humble, because only one who is humble recognizes you as his creator and recognizes himself as your creature." Having said this, he no longer let himself be heard, though I comprehended the power of humility before God. It seemed to me that God has no restraint in entrusting the most precious treasures to the humble. On the contrary, everything is open for them. Nothing is under lock and key. All the opposite for the proud. Even more, it seems that he put a cord around their feet to confuse them at each step. Then, a little later, he made himself seen again and told me, "My daughter, one can know whether a body is alive from its continuous internal heat. It can also be warmed through some external heat. But since this heat does not come from true life, the body quickly cools down again. The same with the soul. It can be known whether she is alive to grace, whether her internal life is alive and operating and loving me, if she feels the strength of my very life within hers. If then it is because of some external cause that she warms up, does some good, and then cools down again, returning to vices and committing the usual weaknesses, there is great certainty that she is dead to grace, or at the last extremes of life. In this way one can know whether it is truly I who go to the soul, if she feels my grace in her interior, and all of her good is founded within her interior. If then it is all external, and she perceives nothing good in her interior, it can be the work of the devil." While saying this, he disappeared, but after a little while he came back and added, "My daughter, how terrible it can be for those souls who have been much fecundated by my grace, but have not corresponded to it. The Jewish nation was the favorite one, the most fecundated, and yet the most sterile, and the whole of my person could not obtain that fruit which Paul obtained in other nations, less fecundated, but more corresponding. In fact, lack of correspondence to grace blinds the soul. It makes her deceive herself, and disposes her to obstinacy, even in the face of any miracle." March 9th, 1906, Volume 7. She sees purging souls going to help the peoples. Continuing in my usual state, I just barely saw Blessed Jesus and many purging souls, whom Jesus Christ was sending to the help of the peoples. It seemed that many disgraces of contagious diseases were to happen to the peoples, and earthquakes in some places. Some were killing themselves, some were throwing themselves into wells or into the sea, and some were killing others. It seems that man is tired of himself, because without God he does not feel the strength to continue living. Oh God, how many chastisements, and how many thousands of people will be victims of these scourges. March 9th, 1908, Volume 8. The lives of all palpitated in the heart of Jesus. Continuing in my usual state, Blessed Jesus came for just a little, and he seemed to draw near me, letting me hear the beats of his heart, but so very strongly. And many other little heartbeats palpitated in his heartbeat. He told me, "My daughter, this is the state in which my heart found itself in the act of my passion." All human lives palpitated in my heart, which with their sins were all in the attitude of giving me death. And my heart, in spite of their ingratitude, taken by violence of love, gave back life to all. This is why I palpitated so strongly, and in my heartbeat I enclosed all human heartbeats, making them rise again into the heartbeats of grace, of love, and of divine delights. And he disappeared. In addition to this, having spent a day with many visits, I was feeling tired, and in my interior I was lamenting to our Lord, saying, "Move creatures away from me. I feel very oppressed. I don't know what they find or want from me. Have pity on the violence I do myself continuously to be with you in my interior and with creatures externally." At that moment the Queen Mamma came, and raising her right hand, pointing to my interior, in which there seemed to be lovable Jesus, told me, "My beloved daughter, do not oppress yourself. Creatures run to where there is a treasure. And since in you there is the treasure of sufferings, in which my sweet Son is enclosed, they come to you. You, however, while dealing with them, do not get distracted from your treasure, making each one love the treasure you contain within you, which is the cross and my Son. In this way, you will send them back all enriched." March 9th, 1919, Volume 12. The Divine Will Must Be Center and Nourishment of the Soul. As I was in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus drew me more and more into his will. What an interminable abyss. Then he told me, "My daughter, take a look at how my humanity swam in the divine volition, which you should imitate." At that moment, a sun seemed to appear before my mind, not so small as the one which shines on our horizon, but so great as to surpass the entire surface of the earth. Even more, one could not see where its boundaries reached, and the rays it spread, forming an enchanting harmony, went up and down, penetrating everywhere. In the center of the sun I could see the humanity of our Lord, nourishing itself from the sun, which formed all his life. He received everything from the sun, and he gave everything back to it, which spread itself like beneficial rain over the whole human family. What an enchanting sight! Then my sweet Jesus added, "Have you seen how I want you? The sun that you see is my will, in which my humanity was as though within its own center. I received everything from my will. No other food entered into me. Not even one thought, one word, or one breath entered into me which was nourished by a food extraneous to my will. It was right that I gave everything back to it. So do I want you, in the center of my will, from which you will take the nourishment of everything. Beware of taking any other food. You would descend from your nobility and degrade yourself, like those queens who lower themselves to taking vile and dirty foods, unworthy of them. And as you take, you must immediately return everything back to me. Therefore you will do nothing other than take and give to me. In this way you too will form an enchanting harmony between me and you." March 9th, 1926, Volume 19. Creation forms the mute glory of God. How in creating man, God played a risky game, but it failed, and he has to make up for it. My poor mind was swimming in the endless sea of the divine volition, and my always lovable Jesus made me see the whole creation in act. What order, what harmony, how many different beauties. Each thing carried the seal of an uncreated love that ran toward creatures, and in descending into the depth of each heart, all things cried out in their mute language, "Love, love the one who so much loves you." I felt a sweet enchantment in seeing the whole creation. Its loving muteness, more than powerful voice, wounded my poor heart to the point that I felt faint. And my sweet Jesus, sustaining me in his arms, told me, "My daughter, all creation says, glory and adoration to our Creator, love to creatures." So creation is a mute glory and adoration for us, because no freedom was conceded to it, either to grow or to decrease. We issued it from ourselves, but we kept it within us, that is, in our will, to sing, though mute, the praises of our power, beauty, magnificence, and glory. So we ourselves sing the praises of our own power, of our own glory, of our own infinite love, power, goodness, harmony, and beauty. Creation gives us nothing by itself. Although being the outpouring of all our divine being, it serves man as mirror in order to look at and to know his Creator, and it gives to him sublime lessons of order, of harmonies, of sanctity, and of love. One can't say that the Creator himself, assuming the attitude of Divine Master, gives as many lessons for as many things as he created, from the greatest to the littlest work which came out of his creative hands. It was not so in creating man. Our love for him was so great as to surpass all the love we had in creation. Therefore we endowed him with reason, memory, and will, and placing our will within his, as though on a counter, we wanted him to multiply it, to increase it 100-fold, not for us, who did not need it, but for his own good, that he might not remain like the other created things, mute and fixed in that point at which we issued them, but he might grow ever more in glory, in riches, in love, and in the likeness of his Creator. And so that he might find all possible imaginable aids, we gave him our will at his disposal, that he might achieve with our very power the good, the growth, and the likeness of his Creator that he wanted to acquire. In creating man, our love wanted to play a risky game by placing our things within the little circle of the human will, as though on a counter. Our beauty, wisdom, sanctity, love, and so forth. And our will was to become the guide and the actor of his operating, not only to make him grow in our likeness, but to give him the shape of a little God. Therefore our sorrow was great in seeing these great goods being rejected by the creature, and for the time being our risky game failed. But even though it failed, it was always a divine game, which could and had to make up for its failure. Therefore, after many years, my love wanted to gamble again, and it did so with my immaculate mamma. In her, our game did not fail. It obtained its full effect, and therefore we gave her everything, and we entrusted everything to her. Even more, we competed, we in giving, she in receiving. Now you must know that our love wants to play this risky game with you also, so that you, united with the celestial mamma, may let us win the game by allowing us to make up for the failure which the first man, Adam, caused us, and so that our will, restored in its victories, may place its goods in the field once again, which with so much love it wants to give to creatures. And just as through the Holy Virgin, because I had made up in my game, I made the sun of redemption rise in order to save the lost humanity, in the same way, through you, I will make the sun of my will rise again, that it may follow its course in the midst of creatures. This is the reason for so many graces of mine which I pour into you, and for the many knowledges about my will. It is nothing else but my risky game which I am forming in you. Therefore be attentive, that you may not cause me the greatest sorrow I could receive in the whole history of the world. the failure of my second game. Ah, no, you will not do this to me. My love will be victorious, and my will find its fulfillment. Jesus disappeared, and I remained concerned about what he had told me, though all abandoned in the supreme volition. Jesus alone knows the torment of my soul about everything I am writing, and my great repugnance in putting these things on paper, which I would rather have buried. I felt like fighting against obedience itself, but the fiat of Jesus won, and so I continued to write what I did not want to. Then my sweet Jesus came back, and seeing me concerned, told me, "My daughter, why do you fear? Do you not want me to play with you? You will put in nothing of your own but the little flame of your will, which I myself gave you in creating you. So all the risks of my goods will be my own. Do you not want to be the copy of my mamma? Therefore come with me before the divine throne, and there you will find the little flame of the will of the Queen of Heaven at the feet of the Supreme Majesty, which she placed into the divine game. In fact, in order to play, one must always put something of one's own. Otherwise, the one who wins has nothing to take, and the one who loses has nothing to leave. And since I won in the game with my mamma, she lost the little flame of her will. But happy loss! By having lost her little flame, leaving it as continuous homage at the feet of her Creator, she formed her life in the great divine fire, growing within the sea of the divine goods, and therefore she could obtain the longed-for Redeemer. Now it is your turn to place the little flame of your little will near that of my inseparable mamma, so that you too may be formed in the divine fire, and may grow with the reflections of your Creator, in order to find grace before the Supreme Majesty to be able to obtain the longed-for fiat. These two little flames will be seen at the foot of the Supreme Throne for all eternity, having had no life of their own, and one of them obtained redemption, the other the fulfillment of my will, the only purpose of creation, of redemption, and of my return match in the risky game of creating man. In one instant I found myself before that inaccessible light, and my will, in the shape of a little flame, placed itself near that of my celestial mamma to do what it was doing. But who can say what I could see, comprehend, and do? I lack the words, and so I stop here. And my sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, I have won the little flame of your will, and you have won mine. Had you not lost yours, you could not have won mine. Now we are both happy. We are both victorious. But look at the great difference which exists in my will. It is enough to do an act, a prayer, and I love you once, that taking its place in the supreme volition, that same act, prayer, or I love you, remains always in the act of being done, without ever ceasing. In fact, when an act is done in my will, that act is no longer subject to interruption. After it is done once, it is done forever, as if it were continuously being done. The operating of the soul in my will comes to partake in the ways of the divine operating. When it operates, it does always the same act, with no need of repeating it. What will your many I love yous in my will be? Always repeating their refrain, I love you, I love you. They will be many wounds for me, and will prepare me to concede the greatest grace, that my will be known, loved, and fulfilled. Therefore, in my will, prayers, works, love, enter into the divine order, and one can say that it is I myself who prays, works, loves. And what could I deny to myself? In what would I not delight? March 9th, 1930, Volume 28. How the knowledges on the divine will contain the science of forming its life and the people of its kingdom. How, in remembering what Jesus did and suffered, his love is renewed. It swells and overflows outside for the good of creatures. My abandonment in the Fiat continues. I feel clasped in its arms of light, and so tightly that it is not given to me to be able to detach even a tiny bit, nor do I, even less so, want to do it. I would very much beware of detaching from its bosom of light. It seems to me that there is an agreement between me and the divine will that both of us cannot separate from the other. Oh, holy will, how lovable and powerful you are! With your loveliness you attract me, you enrapture me, you enchant me. And I, enchanted, would not know what to do so as not to remain fixed in you. And with your power you maintain yourself firm over my littleness. You pour yourself in torrents, in such a way that I have lost the way to go out of your endless light. But happy loss! Oh, please, oh adorable Fiat, make everyone lose the way, that they may know no other way than what leads into your divine will. But how will creatures be able to know such a great good? But while I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus, making himself heard in my interior, told me, "My daughter, the knowledges on my divine will are the ways that can lead creatures into the arms of light of my divine Fiat. The knowledges are the seeds, and this seed makes the beginning of the life of my divine will be born in the creature. The knowledges, each of them, will be like many sips of life that will form in the creature the maturation of this divine life. This is why I have told you so many things about my divine Fiat. Each knowledge will bring some the seed, some the birth, some the food, some the breath, some the air, some the light and the heat, in order to mature the life of my will in souls. Each knowledge contains one more degree of maturation. Therefore, the more they try to know what I have manifested on my divine Fiat, the more they will feel matured. My knowledges about it will mold souls, and with their touch they will extinguish the evils of the human will. They will act like a pitying mother who at any cost wants to heal her child and see him healthy and beautiful. If you knew what a knowledge on my divine will means, they contain the science of forming the life of it in order to form the people of its kingdom. See, the same happens also in the natural order. If one wants to become a teacher, it is necessary for him to know what regards the sciences. And if he does not want to apply himself to knowing the sciences, he will never be mature for being a teacher. And according to the degree of the sciences he has studied, he will possess more or less degrees of education. If a few sciences, he can be mature as an elementary school teacher. And if he has studied many sciences, he can be mature for being a high school professor. So according to how much they know, both in the arts and in the sciences, so have they all the more matured in that good that they know, and are capable of making the good, the sciences, the arts that they possess, mature in others. Now, by having told you so many knowledges on my divine will, it was not in order to give you some beautiful news. No, no, it was in order to form the science of it, first in you, and then in the midst of creatures, so that once this science, divine, and all of heaven is known, it may make the life of the divine Fiat mature and may form its kingdom. After this I was continuing my round in the divine will, and I stopped now at one point, and now at another. of what my beloved Jesus had done and suffered. And he was as though wounded by his very acts that I was placing around him, and by saying to him, "My love, my I love yous run with yours. See, O Jesus, how much you have loved us. Yet there is another thing left to be done. You have not done everything. What is left for you to give us is the great gift of your divine fiat as life in the midst of creatures, that it may reign and form its people. Hurry, O Jesus, what are you waiting for? Your very works, your pains, demand the fiat voluntas tua on earth as it is in heaven." But while I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior and told me, "My daughter, when the soul remembers what I did and suffered in the course of my life down here, I feel my love being renewed. Therefore it swells and overflows, and the sea of my love forms gigantic waves to pour itself, doubled, over the creatures. If you knew with how much love I await you when you go around in my divine will in each of my acts. In fact, in it, everything I did and suffered is all an act, as if I were doing it in reality. And I, with all love, await you to say to you, 'See, daughter, this I did for you. I suffered it for you. Come to recognize the properties of your Jesus that are also yours.' My heart would suffer if the little daughter of my divine will did not recognize all my goods. To keep our goods hidden with one who lives in our divine fiat would be like not keeping her as daughter, or not having our full trust with her. That cannot be, because our will identifies her so much with us that what is ours is hers. So it would be rather a pain for us, and we would find ourselves in the condition of an extremely rich father who possesses many properties, and his children do not know that the father possesses so many goods. Therefore, not knowing them, they get used to living as poor, to having unrefined manners, nor do they care for clothing themselves in a noble fashion. Would it not be a sorrow for the father who keeps his properties hidden from these children? While by making them known, they would change habit by living, clothing themselves, and using noble manners according to their status. If it would be a sorrow for a terrestrial father, much more so for your Jesus, who is celestial Father. As I make known to you what I have done and suffered, and the goods that my divine will possesses, my love grows toward you, and your love grows ever more toward me, and my heart rejoices in seeing our little daughter rich with our own goods. Therefore, your going around in my divine will is an outpouring of my love, and disposes me to make known to you new things, and to give you one more little lesson for everything that belongs to us, and it disposes you to listen to it, and to receive our gifts. March 9th, 1931, Volume 29. The first love of God toward man was made known in creation. Love completed in the creation of man. My abandonment in the divine fiat continues, and since I was doing my acts in it to be able to unite myself to its acts, all creation lined up before my mind, and in its mute language it was saying that the divine volition had loved me as many more times for as many more things as it had created, and that now it was my turn to love it in each created thing, in order to requite it with as many acts of love of mine, so that its love and mine would not be isolated, but would keep each other sweet company. Now, in the meantime, my sweet Jesus came out from the depth of my soul, for he seemed so sunken inside of it, that it was not given to me to see him. And he told me, "My daughter, our love toward the creature was ab eterno. Inside of us we loved her always, but outside of us our first love was made known in creation. As our fiat kept pronouncing itself and, step by step, created the heavens, the sun, and so forth, so it kept making known in each created thing, almost step by step, our love, contained even from eternity, for love of creatures. But you know, my daughter, one love calls for another. Having made itself known in the creation of the universe, and having experienced how refreshing, how sweet is the outpouring of love, and how only by making it known, it pours itself out and one feels how sweet it is to love, so our love, having begun to make itself known, would have given itself no more peace if it had not created him, because of whom it had started to make its love known, as though scattering it in all created things. Therefore it overflowed strongly within us, wanting to make a complete act of love, calling him from nothing, to give him being, and create in him our very life of love. If we would not create in him the life of love in order to be loved back, there was no reason, either divine or human, to make known so much love toward man. If we loved him so much, it was reasonable and rightful that he would love us. But having nothing of his own, it was befitting for our wisdom to create ourselves the life of love in order to be loved back by the creature. But listen, my daughter, to the excess of our love. Before creating him, we were not content with having made known our love in the creation, but it reached such extent that in putting out our qualities from our divine being, we put out seas of power, and we loved him in our power, seas of sanctity, of beauty, of love, and so forth, and we loved him in our sanctity, in our beauty, in our love. And these seas were to serve to invest man, so that he would find in all our qualities the echo of our powerful love, and would love us with powerful love, with holy love, and with love of enrapturing beauty. Therefore, when these seas of our divine qualities were put out of ourselves, we created man, enriching him with our divine qualities, for as much as he could contain, so that he too would have an act that could echo within our power, within our love, within our goodness, to be able to love us with our same qualities. We wanted man, not a servant, but a son, not poor, but rich, not outside of our goods, but inside of our inheritance. And as the confirmation of this, we gave him our very will as life and as law. This is the reason why we love the creature so much, because she has from our own, and not to love one's things is outside of nature and against reason. End of March 9th. Fiat.